Coming up, I'm going to reveal the number one analogy to explain to someone why those of us with alcohol use disorder process alcohol differently than normal drinkers. Welcome back to the Sober Cappy YouTube channel. So I'm going to explain that in the form of a first sober date I had last night. I typically bring it up right off the bat. When it comes right time to ordering drinks, I say, hey, I'm not drinking, but go ahead, order whatever you like, doesn't bother me. And then once we order and all that, I basically explain that I process alcohol differently. And my analogy is the cilantro gene. To me, and to many, cilantro tastes like soap. And I used to think, how can something that all these people love, taste so horrible to me? I thought something was wrong with me. And I'm sure, and when I tell people, they think, cilantro is amazing. How can this guy hate cilantro? And what does he mean it tastes like soap? And luckily I learned through the miracle of Google that it's actually a gene that literally changes the flavor of cilantro into soap, or soapy likeness. And it's fascinating to actually read up on the science behind that. Another one is actually the asparagus pea gene, where for some of us, as soon as we eat asparagus, it seems to be instant. Once we urinate, it smells like a dead animal. It's crazy but true. And that also is a gene that essentially is involved in that process. So for alcohol use disorder, aka alcoholism, it is largely genetic. You can drink yourself into the disorder through things like trauma, etc. But for me, I'm half Irish, and that entire Irish side, struggles with alcohol. So again, what I explain is that I process it differently. I say, just as you can sit there and sip, almost take it or leave it. Take a sip, then you take your next sip, just like water or tea, etc. We can't do that. As soon as I take a sip, I'm thinking about the next sip, and then the next sip, and then the next sip. And then when I'm halfway through the drink, I'm thinking about the next drink. And that's just the way it works. I also define us as having a voice within us. It's our voice, but it's really the voice of the neural pathway that we built up over the years. It's a path that we not only, if it was the woods, we not only, created split the brush, but we actually widened the path, and then we paved that path. And unlike other neural pathways, if every day that we don't drink, it gets weaker, we get stronger to the point it eventually shrivels up, but it never goes away. What I say to people is the only life sentence that this is that we are essentially stuck with that voice for life. But the good news, it thrives on alcohol. It needs alcohol to reinvigorate. So we are the luckiest in the sense of we essentially have a disease that can be cured simply by abstaining from alcohol. But of course, that's easier said than done. For the majority of us, you've got to do the work. Willpower alone does not overcome that. An addiction. She brought up my date, addiction and addictive personalities, which, on a hunch I had previously Googled to see, is that actually really a thing? And it actually says no. Addictive personalities aren't actually a thing. Anyone can become addicted to an addictive substance. Some maybe more, addicted to more than others. But to me, an addiction is an ingrained habit that can be overcome by willpower. I had a gambling habit 30 years ago, lost 10 grand after I paid off my student loans, but then I quit cold turkey. I've never gone back. I have a couple other things that I struggle with, but I know I can overcome them with willpower. This cannot, for the most part, be overcome with willpower, at least not maybe superhuman willpower. And the real willpower is to do the work. And the work is essentially doing hard things sober. It's also replacing the dopamine hit, the artificial dopamine hits of alcohol with natural dopamine hits. But by doing hard things sober, we create new neural pathways that essentially pave over that existing one. And in some ways I call myself low-level schizophrenic, because that voice truly isn't me. If it was, and if it was others, we'd all be the best salesmen in the world, because that voice does not take no for an answer. And that's why you need to do the work to fortify yourself, to strengthen yourself from physical and mental attacks of the voice. That voice senses weakness. It can pounce at any time. You've always got to remain vigilant. And that's why, we're never safe. But I don't like, and what I said to her, you're probably going to go back, tell your friend, oh, he's an alcoholic. And people always have a fear that an alcoholic could slip start drinking again any day. But what I told her is it's not the case with me. I have done the work. I'm well on my way to emotional sobriety, achieving life on life's terms, and even feeling permission to enjoy life sober. And I'm never going back. I haven't said, I might have another, or at one point I thought I might have another slip in me, but I know I don't have another recovery in me. So I'm not even going to risk it. And I told her, it's my life depends on it in more ways than one, since I now plan to make my life about speaking about sobriety. So what else? The term, I told her that I am a retired alcoholic. I consider an alcoholic to be someone who knows they have a problem, but isn't doing any of the work to overcome it. So I just say I'm essentially sober, or I do have alcohol use disorder. But I say there's no better person to date than a retired alcoholic, because we are doing the work. We were forced to do the work that everyone essentially needs to do. Everyone should be in therapy. Let's face it, the therapist is like a personal trainer for your life. So I do both therapy, coaching, and I share on sobriety calls. It's all a tremendous help of making me, a better person every day. And what woman doesn't want to date someone that's doing that? It's funny, they say a woman, when she gets married hoping, the guy will change, and the guy gets married hoping the woman never changes, which is why the divorce, which never happens and rarely happens, and why the divorce rate should be even higher than it is. Interestingly, this date happened to say her the love of her life, dated 3-4 years. He was a severe alcoholic. And she said alcohol was the one thing he loved more than her. And I said, sadly, he probably even loved alcohol more than himself. So, in those cases, it's understandable. But a retired alcoholic, I said, hey, you've always got a sober driver. You're always going to get that authentic person. And you're going to, if anything, want to step up and almost do the same level of work that he's doing if you're not already. So to me, when I'm on a date or explaining it to anybody, my saying is, if it's not a big deal to you, it should not be a big deal to them. And she talked as we were walking out, she said, well, I don't like people hiding behind it being hereditary. And I said, that's fair, I said. And as we say in my community, taken from the leader of it, Laura McCown, who's wrote a couple great books on sobriety, including We Are the Luckiest, which we truly are. But she has a set of 9, essentially, mantras, and the first 2 are, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So I said, yeah, it's not my fault that I was predisposed to it, but it is my responsibility to do the work, to overcome it, to live out my greatest potential, which I am starting to do, and I can't wait. I'm starting to sprout my sober wings, got the sober spring in my step, and I'm intoxicated on life, and it's only gonna get better. So that's it. Please like, share, subscribe, etc. And remember, stronger sober. Welcome to the first overtime. I added this so that I could record the initial video in less takes. That one, I'm proud to say, was only 2 takes, and realized I can just iterate, which is my word of the year, improve upon by adding this segment of key things I forgot. So first off, forgot to say that for those who've been following in order, I did not sing a song at the beginning of this one. You're welcome. I didn't really want to force it, and initially didn't have a song for this, and then randomly a song by the Cars, Uh-Oh, It's Magic, When I'm With You, came on, and I did use that in the first take of this video to say that person's now me. It is kind of magic being with myself, and hopefully others feel that when they're with me. Through this process, I'm slowly starting to fall in love with myself. Hopefully the greatest love of all will be inside of me. Could be a future opening song. Secondly, I forgot one of the most important things, that my date, like many, held the outdated belief that even small amounts of alcohol are not bad for you. And I just kind of let that go. But she said, yeah, up to 14 drinks a week for guys. But actually, no, even less than 1 drink for women and 2 drinks for men brings out a 9.3% decrease in sleep quality. A full 1 drink for women, 2 drinks for men is a 24% decrease, and more than just 1 drink for women and more than 2 for men brings up to a 39%, or does bring a 39% decrease in sleep quality. Crazy. What else? Follow-up. It's kind of hard to get a read because we did end up talking so much about sobriety. And remember, she had an ex who she basically had to leave because he could not overcome his disorder. So, you know, it was hard to read her. We did a follow-up call after, and she basically said she really needs to think about it because she's afraid of always being in fear of a relapse. I told her, totally understandable, but I felt certainly my situation was unique in terms of doing the work. You know, I talked about fortify. My other word of the year is I'm constantly vigilant and strengthening myself against mental and physical attacks. And that's by doing hard things sober and doing all the work that I always talk about. And as Lauren McCowan, who I referenced, leader of my sober community, talks about, is one reason people need to, you know, or do attend meetings for life. You will forget. So I will always remind myself by various ways of doing the work, and also reminder, it's now my vocation talking about sobriety every day. So definitely gonna help. And the last thing, you know, she talked about, but you just never know. And I said, absolutely, you know, grief. She works in the medical field involving hospice and palliative care. She said grief is a brutal thing. I said, absolutely, but I get stronger every day, and that's by building up my resilience, which is a huge part of the sobriety process, which definition I'm looking at is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And to me, the resilience is the key to life and a big part of my why I wanted to get sober. So that'll do it. I got a lot more to say about sober dating in a future episode. Thanks as always for listening.